Welcome to the High Performance Disciple podcast. My name is Gareth Morgan, and my goal is to help you close the gap between your God-given potential and your daily performance. What I do is I explore the explosive combination of timeless spiritual principles and high performance practices that will enable you to take control, to be courageous, and to release the greatness that is in you. This conversation is designed to help high achieving, high impact leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, and pioneers turn fear into faith, confusion into clarity, frustration into focus, and stress into strategy. If you enjoy what you hear, I would love for you to like it, to subscribe, to comment, and share it with others that you believe in. Here's today's conversation. Welcome to the High Performance Disciple podcast, episode 6. I can't wait to share with you in our time together today. And what I'm going to do in this episode is to pick up on something I mentioned in episode 1. In episode 1, when I laid out the concept of high performance disciple and this particular podcast, I conveyed the fact that I wanted to embrace two sets of audiences. There would be the audience that is not necessarily religious or faith driven, but is aspirational and hungry to grow. You love personal development, and so anything that is going to help you make progress, you'll consume and hopefully apply, and that will bring some transformation to what you're doing and help you on your journey. So I really want to speak to that audience. So you are very, very welcome. But then, of course, you've got the other audience, which is made up of people who are faith-driven, who have a faith, and particularly those who have a faith similar to myself, which is the Christian faith. You too are a high achiever. You are somebody who is aspirational. And so for you, combining that with your faith is really attractive, a conversation to hear and be a part of. So I'm embracing these two audiences. And what I wanted to do in this episode particularly is to unpack two particular concepts that I mentioned in episode 1. I only touched on lightly because it needed more time. And so I'm going to use this conversation right now to talk about the Bible. The Bible carries many sayings and principles that people of faith or no faith use today. You know, you'll hear things such as treat others as you would want to be treated. Well, that's rooted in the Bible. Get people say that because they believe it's a good ethos. It's a good principle to live by. And so it's universally held and subscribed to. And you don't have to be a believer in the God of the Bible to embrace that principle. It's a code of success. It's a code of conduct that will help you develop strong relationships. And we all know that relationships are a key part of personal growth and development and unlocking opportunity in life, in business, in whatever sphere you're in. There are so many other principles that are in the Bible that we could spend literally, countless episodes looking at just those alone. But I guess I want to draw back from the actual principles themselves and to almost look at it from the point of view of, okay, how are we going to treat the Bible? I think it's important for every person to at least have a conclusion that they're going to carry at the moment and say, hey, do you know, this is the role that this important book that plays a key role in society, that's what this book means to me. So I talked about the fact that we can view the Bible as a code of success. So what's a code? Well, I was a gamer growing up. I used to love my computer games. They weren't as advanced as they are now, but I used to love computer games. I loved trying to get through the levels, and used to get highly frustrated and spend countless hours on games when I couldn't get past the end of level baddie on a particular platform game. And there were always magazines that were out there, and there were magazines because there wasn't an internet at the time, where you could go and get a code that would enable you to unlock the next level. They were called cheat codes. They enabled you to do something that in your own power and strength you couldn't do. And some people would just go and get them anyway because they just wanted to see what the next level looked like. I personally stayed away from them because I wanted to try and do it in my own ability and to use that opportunity to get better. But there were these codes, and the whole idea was that the codes allowed you to move to the next level. They enabled progress where up to now progress had been halted. And so that's what a code does. It enables success. It enables breakthrough. So I talked about the Bible being like a code of success. You can treat the Bible as a code of success full of principles that you don't necessarily have to subscribe to the Christian faith or the God of the Bible or Jesus being the Son of God. You can take the sayings of Jesus, you can take the sayings in the Bible and use them as a code. But then I differentiated between that and the Bible being a covenant of significance. So another concept, but takes it to another level. And it's that difference between those two concepts that I want to unpack. And if I treat the Bible as a code of success, what can I expect? And then if I make that shift, I'm going to explain what that shift is, to a covenant of significance, then what can I expect as a result of treating it from that different perspective? And what I want to help you do is to process this, because you're here, both audiences, based on a shared goal that you want to grow and you want to develop. And so I thought it would be useful for me to share why I treat the Bible as a covenant of significance and what the outcomes specifically are when it comes to personal growth and development. Because I'm a firm believer that if that shift is worth making, then it's important to understand what those outcomes are. Not that that becomes the reason why I make that shift, but actually knowing that those are the outcomes can be enlightening. It can help me make a decision on how I treat this historical book. And again, let me make it very, very clear, as is with the intention of this podcast, the goal isn't to make you think like me. It's to enable you to hear my perspective, and I love to hear your perspectives and your thoughts, and to give that opportunity to be processed and to have a think through which angle for you is right, which angle for you right now is going to help you where you are. So that's what I want to do. My goal through this podcast is to help you become a healthy, high-performing leader. And I just thought taking some time to unpack this concept could be helpful. And of course, in the other episodes that we have, we will be actually looking at the principles that are in this code of success or covenant of significance. So I want to unpack the difference between the two. Now, let me just give you an example of a recent code of success that the Bible holds that I think we've actually identified and seen and embraced through the whole pandemic situation that we've had. It's interesting because, and don't forget that the Bible is made up of an Old Testament and a New Testament, and that certainly the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the law, the Jewish law, is of course foundational to the Jewish faith, Judaism. And so you've got another part of the Bible that is being held central to another faith group. And it's interesting because Jews know, especially in the area of business and organization development, that their Bible, their law, their truths have an active, applicable, relevant place in being successful in what they put their hands to, in what they put their time and effort into. For them, it's not that they park their religious faith in one compartment of their life and then I go and do the rest of my life, but they're integrated. That actually faith and belief forms a foundational and functional role in being prosperous. And it's a central theme in the Old Testament. With God's people, God wanted a relationship whereby through that relationship, God would make very, very clear what he was bringing to that relationship. And that's where we get the word covenant from in the Old Testament. A covenant is more than a contract, but similar to a contract where two or more parties engage in a relationship and there are specific commitments that the parties make to fulfill the contract. The difference, though, between a contract and a covenant is that whereas a contract could be held between two parties where there is no real relationship other than a transactional relationship, a covenant relationship is based very much upon a loving relationship. So marriage is talked about as a covenant. So it's an agreement where two parties come together and there's an agreement based upon what we're entering into and our commitment to one another, and both of those parties have a side of their agreement that they are committed to, that they are going to uphold, and that is the basis of a covenant. So God entered into a covenant relationship with a group of people. It all came through Abraham, and of course Abraham is a key central figure not only in the Christian and Jewish faith, but also of course in Islam. And so Abraham and the story of Abraham, there's a key role, but we haven't got time to go into all that right now. But essentially, God wanted a relationship with mankind, and so he established this covenant relationship. And God would uphold his side of that commitment, that loving relationship, and his responsibilities in that relationship, if his people, the people that he entered into a relationship with, would uphold theirs. And so you've got this commitment to one another for there to be a win. The goal in any relationship that is entered into between two parties or more is one in which, you want to win. You don't start certainly a loving relationship wanting to lose. You're in it for the win. But the win is a collective win. It's a win where everybody gets to win, but everybody has to play a part in contributing. And so that's the backdrop to what a covenant is. And the journey of the Bible is really the story of how that relationship goes and how that relationship was established on the back of the fact that God created mankind and mankind rejected God's way of doing things, the code of success. He rejected the covenant of significance, the relationship, and decided to do things his own way. And again, according to the biblical story, that's where all of the issues and challenges and problems that we experience today come from. They were all rooted in that decision to reject the covenant, the relationship with God, but also the code of success. Basically to break off all ties with that truth and to go his own way. And when I say his, I'm talking mankind. So that's the backdrop. And then we've got this story of the Bible, which is the unfolding journey of man's attempt, sometimes successfully and sometimes failing miserably, to have this relationship with God, with the goal being that this relationship would produce increase, prosperity, growth. Now, I hope you can understand why I'm talking about this on a podcast called the High Performance Disciple Podcast, because that's what we want. That's what we all share in common. Faith person or non-faith person. Who doesn't want to see increase? Who doesn't want to see growth? Who doesn't want to see breakthrough? Who doesn't want to see prosperity? Like, we want to see that for our lives, for our communities, for our cities, our nations, towns, villages. We want to see that. Like, if we are of a right mind and we have got kind of good morals, and then we want to see that, and we want to see that for everyone. So the journey of this relationship with God through a covenant is the story of the Bible. And again, let me give you an illustration from that Old Testament. Like, one of the laws particularly that is still a law for the Jewish faith, and that is that every 7 years, the farmer was told not to harvest the fields. In other words, that for 6 years, the fields, of course, would be they would plow the fields, they would prepare the fields for being seeded, they would seed the fields, tend to the fields, harvest then the grain of the fields, and of course the cycle would continue year after year, and it would produce increase. So every year for 6 years, that's what would happen. But then on the 7th year, the instruction was, you don't go through that process. You leave the land. You let the land rest. Okay? And the principle there is that just as human beings, for us to function at our optimal state, we can't do that running 7 days a week. Now, this may be challenging to some of us listening to this, because maybe right now we are running on a 7-day-a-week work schedule. Now, you may be doing that for good reasons, and it may be a right motivation. But the reality is, you can't sustain optimal performance running 7 days a week, working 7 days a week. You are violating a principle that is inherent into our makeup. Now, again, my faith says that that's informed by God who created us. But regardless of whether you believe that or not, I don't believe anybody in the scientific world, those who don't have a faith worldview, would subscribe to the fact that you can operate optimally 7 days a week. Why? Because every 6 days we at least need a 7th day of rest. And that rest is part of the tension that we need in our lives to go between rest and stress. Just as if, not working for 6 days and then working just 1 day isn't enough stress for growth. Like, we need stress. Like, a life without stress is a life without growth. Yeah, we actually need stress, the right kind of stress. I accept that, but we need stress. Go into a gym and say, I'm signing up for this gym, but I don't want any stress on my body, and you'd get some funny looks, because the whole point is you put your body under stress. The resistance builds the muscle. But you can't go to the gym 7 days a week and expect to develop optimally. Your body needs to oscillate between stress and rest. And it's an athlete's objective to understand what that tension should be. When is it enough stress, and when is it too much stress? And we get injuries when we apply too much stress and not enough rest. But also we end up not developing the strength, the capacity and capability and competency if we don't put enough stress on, and we're just lazy and we're not doing enough. So there's a tension there. So back to the principle of the land. The land needed an opportunity to rest, to heal itself, to be renewed. And I said that I'm linking this now to what happened in COVID. Did you notice that in those few months when we first entered into lockdown? Now, you may be listening to this from a different country. I'm obviously here in the UK. But I think something of what I'm sharing probably was part of your experience, because let's face it, the whole world had at least a break from normality, wherever you're listening to this. And at the time, we were living in London. We were living by a busy road. And all of a sudden, within a few weeks, we could hear things we'd not heard while we were living there. We heard birds sing like they'd never sung before. We experienced nature, even things growing in the garden, even certain bird types entering into our garden that we had never seen before. And it was almost as if nature was allowed to breathe again. It was almost like that enforced inactivity allowed a renewal to take place. And I remember reflecting back on that. And I know there's been lots of stories about even how the oceans were positively affected during that time. Now, I know there was a lot of negatives with COVID, so I know it wasn't all good news, but just purely in nature and environmental terms, there were tremendous positives because all of a sudden the planet was allowed to breathe because we had enforced rest. Now, again, the reason I'm sharing that is because that was enforced. But we know the principle has been there for thousands of years. So we know that there are keys to success, is what I'm getting at here. That regardless of our worldview, if we're truly a high performer, wanting to live healthy, wholesome lives, developing as leaders who are going to produce followers who are healthy, high-producing leaders themselves, we've got to try and get these codes of success, at the very least, get them down, get them applied and processed so that we can become the best version of ourselves and tap into some of those laws, call them universal laws, call them biblical laws, whatever you call them, but they're laws and they're there and they can be tried and tested and proven against. Then that's what I mean by there's a code, just from that one example, and there are many other examples. There are many codes, and some people can look at the commands in the Bible and think, well, that's just, a God who's a megalomaniac, who's a control freak, and so he's just imposing his will on mankind with no real reason why. And I would beg to differ in that actually when you actually look at the laws, if they're given by a God who is wanting a win, for not just himself, but for those he's created, then actually those laws aren't actually to prohibit us from entering into fullness, but they're there to actually ensure that we experience fullness. Freedom isn't the absence of boundaries, but actually it's the presence of boundaries. Freedom isn't the absence of responsibility, but actually it's the increase of responsibility. And so that's what I mean by understanding that I don't think we can ignore the Bible, but we certainly got to ask ourselves the question, what is it going to be in terms of its role in my journey as a high performing leader? So here's some differences between what a code of success is and a covenant of significance. And again, we could probably spend a whole lot more time than I've got and you've got to go through this, but I hope this starts to at least stir your curiosity, if not give you some kind of answers. So what is a code? A code is a system of words, letters, figures, symbols used to hide secrets. Okay, so there are secrets that are hidden in the Bible. My belief is they're not hidden from you, they're hidden for you. But then a covenant is an agreement which brings about a relationship based upon a commitment, but that commitment between two or more parties, the sum total of those involved produces more than just the constituent parts. So, for instance, me and Leanne, my wife, we have a covenant relationship we entered into with a commitment to one another. We are two individuals. It is my belief that if we commit to our agreement from both sides, that the sum of that partnership, the synergy, will produce more than the individual parts, just me on my own and Leanne on her own, can create. Okay, that's synergy. Again, it's a principle. And a covenant is just that. It is about a loving environment where faithfulness in that relationship will always go further than just the individuals on their own. Which is why, for me, if I'm a high performer and I want to grow, I really want to know where this whole God thing sits. Because if a relationship with God can produce more growth than me without God, I've got to at least give that some time and some thought. So a code, another difference here is a code is a means to an end. Think about it. So going back to my analogy of the computer games. So I buy a magazine, or at the time on magazine, you could probably go online now. I get the codes to make it through the levels, and it's a means to an end. It's a means to an end. I have no particular relationship with the writer of that magazine or whoever's writing that blog. I just want the code to get through the level. It's a means to an end. So we can treat the Bible like a means to an end. It's got principles. The principles work. That's all I want. But a covenant produces meaning for the end. So a code is a means to an end, but a covenant produces the meaning for the end. So if I was to say, who wants more in their life? And you'd be like, yeah, I want more. I want more fun, money, relationships, significance, progress, opportunity. We all want more. The code unlocks the more, but the covenant tells us what that more is really for. It gives a meaning to the end result. A code is about unlocking secrets for an outcome. So I can unlock secrets. The secrets are there, they're hidden for me, but a covenant discovers the purpose for the secrets. So I use the analogy of at Easter time, we have fun in our household, even though my kids are getting older. They love to do an Easter hunt with the eggs. And so I go and I hide eggs for them. Now, those eggs were hidden for them, not from them. If I hid them from them, then those eggs would still be at those houses that we've previously lived at, because I didn't want the children to have them. But the reality was I hid them for them, and what they remember years later is not the chocolate that was on their lips, but it was actually the process of finding them. The relationship moments that we enjoyed in the process of discovery. And so a covenant of significance discovers the purpose for the secrets. The secrets that God hides for me, I believe, is to enhance his relationship with me. A code is about the excitement of discovering more. Let's face it, like, what's on that next level, that next computer level? Let me get the code, let me get the secrets, or let me get the principles that are going to help me make progress with my business, my career, make more money, whatever it is. It's exciting, right? It's exciting to be curious, to discover more. You should have an excitement, yeah? And that's why you're listening to this podcast. But a covenant is not just about the excitement of discovering more, but it's the excitement of becoming more than I can on my own. It's that process again of, with the involvement of a God who, if he exists, is infinitely more wise, powerful, present than I am, then that's a pretty exciting combination of my potential with his potential. Then wow, like that covenant, that relationship can produce a whole lot more than just me on my own. So again, I'm just expressing kind of where I'm coming from with this whole thing of covenant of significance. A code is about the excitement of discovering more, like discovering what's on that next level, discovering what is that next opportunity by applying this principle. There's an excitement and a curiosity behind discovering. But a covenant is about becoming more. It's the excitement of, if there is a divine being who has inspired these codes of success, then actually I can become more with that relationship, more so than on my own. And there's an excitement to that. There's an intrigue, a mystery to that. Because let me tell you now, I don't understand all there is to know about who God is. It is a mystery. There is truth, but there's a mystery. But again, the angle I'm coming at here is that from a person who is a a high achiever, high performer who loves to grow and develop and loves personal development, then the covenant of relationship and significance is one that's why I tap into it, because I realize that I'm becoming more than I can on my own. A code can get me promotion, like a code can get me to the next level, but a covenant relationship doesn't just get me to the level, it actually protects me at that next level. It actually fights to keep me promoted. Think about it in terms of relationship. It's not just that it's a one-sided thing, that there is an agreement on both sides. You look again in the Bible that God made a promise to the children of Israel that they would be the head and not the tail. They would be above and not beneath if they kept his commands. In other words, I will not only get you promoted, I'll keep you promoted. So wow, if this is true, like if this is true, then this is a powerful shift between a code and a covenant. A code can elevate who I want to become. It can exalt and lift up like this avatar or image of who I believe I am. Whereas a covenant is where I choose to lose my identity in a greater identity. Let me explain what I mean by that. And again, I haven't got time to go into this, but that's why the death of Jesus and the resurrection of Jesus play such an important role, because it is the path through which I choose to surrender the old Gareth with the gaps in his identity of poor self-concept, of poor self-image. And I surrender that because I realize that on its own, it is hindered, it is encumbered by all kinds of flaws and problems. And yes, there's lots of potential in me, but there's a lot of flaws in my character. So I need to go through a process of laying that down and embracing a new identity. And that's what a covenant does. Again, the concept of marriage is that actually the two surrender individual identities for the sake of creating a single identity. Now, don't misunderstand me. They are still two separate people, but they're creating a oneness. Why? Because the oneness produces more because of synergy, but also there's the ability to create a greater image. Use it in business. You don't create a great brand image with one person. It takes a team to create a greater brand image. Well, again, in a covenant of significance, when you take a significant being such as God and you take the significant potential that you carry and you combine that, then boy, do you get a explosive combination, which is a term that I use in the intro. You get an explosive combination for producing positive change. So again, a couple more and then I'll finish. A code accesses common grace available to all. In other words, again, from a faith point of view, there is a common grace. Grace is something that we cannot earn, but is available to us as human beings to access. And there's a common grace, something that is an opportunity that we can tap into. And these principles allow us to access something that we haven't earned, we don't deserve it, but it's available to us, regardless of faith, ethnicity, background, socioeconomic status. It's a common grace. But the shift between a code of success and a covenant of significance is that a covenant accesses covenant grace, which is prepared specifically for those who enter into that relationship. So I can access common grace, but there's a special covenant grace which is bestowed upon those who enter into that relationship. So again, just unpacking some differences here, and we can pick up in our conversations if you want, again, as we interact, maybe unpacking some more of this. A final thing is this: a code changes my outcomes. I apply the code and I get to the next level. I apply the principle, I experience breakthrough, boom. But a covenant not only changes my outcomes, it changes my outlook. it actually fundamentally enlarges the story of my life. And therefore, you enlarge the story, you enlarge the vision of the potential role that I can play in that story. That's why I talk about the difference between a code of success, because success is experiencing breakthrough, it's experiencing increase at a level, but success and significance are on two different levels. I can be successful at something but not have a significant impact. And I believe in every human being, and especially those of us who are high performers and who want to be healthy, high-performing leaders, we want to have a significant impact. And I believe that one way that we can do that, or a route to that, is through that covenant relationship with God, because it changes the story. It enlarges the story. All of a sudden, I'm thinking at a whole nother, not even whole nother level, whole other stratosphere. Anyway, I'm going to stop there. I really hope that this episode has really helped you just to tap into those two concepts. And again, as I said, this is not about me trying to get you to think like me. This is me just explaining my thought processes, because I love to talk this through with people. And the common thing that holds us together is that we want to bring the best version of ourselves to what truly matters most, to have a positive impact on society. And if that's the language we're talking, then hey, regardless of what angle you come from, I love to cheer you on and to be part of helping you on your journey. And I really hope this episode goes some way to helping you make progress. Remember, take control, be courageous, and release the greatness in you. I hope today's episode was helpful to you. You can get more by subscribing to my channel, and I have more content and tools that can help you on your journey if you'd like to head over to garethmorgan.tv. Remember, today and every day you are a champion, and there is more in you than you think.